Exciting. It's been amazing. It's been an amazing year, and it's been amazing how God is working, and I want to talk to you guys about this, and I want to take us into, as a church family, into a season of vision, and a season when we're going to look back a little bit today about what God has done, and then I want to spend most of our day looking ahead to opportunities that He's given us, and just talk about how we pursue those things and embrace those things as a church family. My job as a pastor is to look at you and say, how has God called you? How has God created you? When you look at how you accepted Christ, you look at your personality, and you look at your abilities, and you look at your spiritual gifts, and you look at the kind of the unique passions of your heart. All of that is woven into you by God. And that's why you have certain, we call them God dreams here at Grace. There's certain things that you're passionate about, or when you sit and think, man, if God could ever use me in this way, this is the way that I hope that He would use me. I hope that He would use my ability or my passions or redeem my pain or whatever it is, that I would hope that God would use me in that way. And God creates in you an individual God dream. Well, all a church is a sum total of its individual parts. So as you have these God dreams within you, what happens is the Bible says God forms the church. Christ forms the church. We don't form it. We don't form it with marketing and with good programs. God forms the church. So that's why when you look back and say, like, as an example, sports was pivotal in my life, and I see how it helped me and it walked me through things. I have a passion for it. I want to do that with other people. That's why when you come to Grace, you bump into a bunch of other people who are the same way, who think the same way, because God's forming that. Or I have a heartbeat for teenagers and fatherlessness. I want to disciple, and I want to be a mentor. Well, you're going to bump into people who have the same idea, because God is forming a church around those things. So my job as a pastor is to make sure that you discover those things in your walk with God. And then as you discover those things and God kind of elevates those things here at the church, that then we tune into what God is saying, right? So like when we built the new gymnasium on the other side of the Jet Road building, it's funny, a lot of people looked at me and said, Jeff, you must be a sports fanatic. I'm like, I'm actually not. I mean, I love the Ohio State Buckeyes because Jesus does, but I'm actually not. I'm not a sports fanatic. I see people who are wired to think that way brought into a local church. My job is to understand that and realize, oh, God is working in those ways, see? And there would be lots of things like that. That it's not preferences, it's not ideas, it's not marketing. It's God working, right? So what happens in times of vision, seasons of vision, is we're looking at all that and saying, what has God done? What are doors that we see like He feels like He is opening to us? And then how do we as a church get resources and relationships around those opportunities so that we can continue to allow God to build us and move us in the way that He wants to, all right? So we're going to be talking about here this for a while. We're going to be talking about how God's created you, how God wants to work through you, and then how God brings the yous together, takes the me and turns it into a we, and then how God works through us and moves the church forward. So I want to walk you through some of this a little bit today. I want to look back for a minute or two about what God has done, and I want to show you how that ties into how we look and see how God is moving forward, okay? So at Grace Church, what we do, when we started Grace Church 24 years ago, all we did was we looked at the Bible and said, what is a church supposed to be? And so when you're looking for what a church is supposed to be in the Bible, you usually turn to the book of Acts. And when you turn to the book of Acts, the church had been birthed. Jesus had started the church already, and He gave some direction to the church. He said, listen, I want you to go into all the world. I want you to make disciples. I want you to baptize people. I want you to teach people everything that I have commanded them. Teach them how to obey and follow me. And so we look at all those things and said, okay, that's our great commission. That's what God wants us to do. How do we go about acting on that great commission? And you'll see kind of those examples in the book of Acts. And you'll see that playing out by the early church. And what you'll see over and over again is what the early church did was they said, we're going to go evangelize people. We're going to tell people about who Jesus is. When they accept Jesus, we're going to include them into the family. And symbolically, that's what baptism does. And it kind of announces that I'm a follower of Jesus Christ now. We're going to train them how to obey Jesus. This is what it means to be a follower of Jesus. We're going to entrust reliable people with the information about God so that they can then teach other people, and then we're going to send those other people out. And so you see that pattern again and again. You see evangelism, you see training, you see the raising up of leaders, and then you see those leaders sent out. And when you look at the book of Acts, especially chapter 13 and 14, you'll see that played out again and again and again. And you'll see a local church that evangelized, that trained, that entrusted, and then sent them out. The book of Acts plays out over about a 30 or 40-year span. And in that 30-ish years, they started about 30 churches. And so we look and say that's what the Great Commission is. That's how it plays out. That's what God would expect a church to be. And our nickname for that at Grace Church is 30 and 30. And we just looked and said, God, if in the next 30 years, starting from today, whatever today is, in the next 30 years, if you did something so powerful in a 30-year span, and you did something so powerful through about these 30 churches that were started, so powerful that a couple of thousand years later, we're sitting in Akron, Ohio, talking about Jesus. So how did Jesus go from being known in a segment of an ancient city, Jerusalem, to us talking about him in Akron, Ohio? And how did that gospel or good news spread, ready? Before the printing press, before radio, before the teletype, before television, and before the internet. How did that spread? Well, it spread by everybody was looking at the same book we look at and said, that seems like that's what you're supposed to do. And a church is supposed to evangelize, a church is supposed to disciple or train up, a church is supposed to raise up leaders, and then we send them out. And step by step by step, the gospel of Jesus moved literally across the world because that's what Jesus told us to do. And in the book of Acts, chapter 1, verse 8, last thing Jesus said to his disciples before he went back to heaven, he said, you're going to be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Samaria, Judea, and the uttermost parts of the earth. So in town, in your state, in your country, and the planet. And so every healthy local church has those elements in us, and you see it played out in the book of Acts, and you look at it and say, well, that, as I read the book, that's like the general description of what a church does and how that plays out, okay? Now, what that means is this. That means that a church is to have a global mindset and a local mindset simultaneously. And one of the things that's weird about Grace, it's not that we're smarter or that we're better. You do have very sexy power. I mean, this helps. This helps a lot. But it's not that we're good at all that kind of stuff. It's that we're just looking at the book. And from the inception of Grace Church, we've looked and said, how do we do global stuff and local stuff simultaneously? Because as the church would send out these missionaries and they would go plant churches, they would simultaneously take care of widows and orphans and people in need in their local community. And so how do we do those two things and what we've been working on? And we gave ourselves to that, and God has been blessing that over the years. So I just want to look back 10 years and just remind you. So real quick, in the last 10 years, you see this global and local playing out simultaneously here at Grace Church. So over 10 years, we brought in Grace College to help us train up pastors, missionaries, and directors. We purchased the Montrose building so we could start our sports ministry in it about 10 years ago because we know that sports is a way to connect with our community. People don't tend to care if you talk about Jesus as long as there's a ball involved. And so we're like, okay, let's have a gym. We built the discipleship wing over here so that we had places to train people. That building is used to capacity every day of the week. Then we got involved with Rahab, and we helped to build the Safe House there. Incredible partner. We still believe very deeply in what they're doing. We still partner with them, and that's to intervene in sex trafficking. And so we're like, that's a real problem in our community. How can we step in a real way? We started interns and residents and started scholarshiping them. I'll tell you more about that in a minute, so that we could have more pastors, more missionaries, more directors. Grace Seminary came in. We built Restore Recovery House. We looked and said, drug issues are a massive issue in Northeast Ohio. Can we be a part of that? Very actively involved with that. And then here recently, we opened the Sports and the Power Kids wing, because we realized our community was saying, give us more of sports. And we're like, well, it's all Jesus stuff. They're like, we're fine. Give us sports. It's Northeast Ohio. Make it indoor. We'll come, right? And show up with you. So locally, we've been doing that stuff, while on a big scale, we've been doing the global stuff. So we started the Medina East campus about 10 years ago, the Barberton campus, the Akron East campus, the Town Center campus, the County Line campus, the Gathering Point campus, one community church. We've sent missionaries to Mexico, missionaries to Africa. We've sent missionaries all over the world. We're doing all this global stuff as we do this local stuff, and we do it simultaneously, right? And we evangelize. We help people know who Jesus is. We disciple, we train up, and then we send out. So the end result of that is that all these campuses, when I say campus, you should think church plant. So all these campuses have been started. As we've seen thousands of people come to Christ in the last 10 years, and I'm not exaggerating that number, and thousands of people be baptized in the last 10 years, the Bath campus has sent out about 1,800 people to start and to provide leadership at our other campuses that we started. As we've sent out about 1,800 people, our attendance is higher than it's ever been. Because we send while we keep loving, helping, reaching our local community. And we do those things simultaneously. And the reason we do that is because when we read the Bible, that was what it instructed us to do. And it's been a powerful and incredible thing. We've got to be a part of the gospel moving throughout Northeast Ohio, South Carolina, Atlanta, Africa, Mexico, Brazil, Guatemala, on and on and on. And we get to be a part of that. And because God, as we follow this mandate, God has given us like a special favor to be able to do that and to operate in those ways. So when I look back and I see all of that, what I think of, I don't think of how amazing Grace Church is. I think about how God has been faithful. Because every one of those things is scary. And every one of those things is a leadership lift. And every one of those things involves you looking and saying, God, what are you calling me to? So that we, through you, through us, we then can respond. So every one of those 1,800 people prayed, thought, was challenged by, maybe I should uproot our family and we should go to another campus. Maybe I'm being called into ministry. All these interns and residents, maybe I'm being called into ministry. And I'm going to move my career, my vocation in a different direction. Maybe I'm supposed to sell everything and move to full-time missions in Mexico. That happened about 2 years ago. Maybe I'm moving down into an inner city in South Carolina and starting a church at a place that nobody said that a church could not be started, and we're running 150 people there, so that feels good, right? Right? And that's individuals saying, this is what God is doing. This is how God is calling me. God brings us together as individuals, and it's through you, through us then, that we see God work and we move forward with it. So when I look back, I see God's faithfulness. I see proof of concept, so to say. And I see that when we say yes to God, God blesses that yes, right? Now, what I want to do is look forward. And I believe that we have some absolutely incredible opportunities in front of us, and that God is allowing us to get a hold of stuff and to move in some new directions. And I've been waiting forever. I've been talking about this stuff since September. And so I've been waiting forever to get up here and talk to you guys about it because I think it's incredible what God has in front of us. So let's start with the big side of it, the global side of it. When I look at the global movement of what God has in front of us, what I see are incredible opportunities that have been created because we made an investment 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, we invested in what we call interns and residents. Okay, an intern and a resident. An intern is a person who earns a scholarship by working part-time for Grace Church, and then they go to full-time Bible school. A resident is a person who earns a scholarship by working full-time for Grace Church, and they're going to full-time seminary. And these are men and women who've said, you need a pastor, you need a director, you need a missionary. I'll do it. And if you can help me do it, I'm 100% in on doing that. The reason that we scholarship and they earn these scholarships is because if you want a Bible degree or a theology degree, you cannot go to Akron U and get one. You can't go to Kent and get one. You have to go to a private school, and private schools are wildly expensive. That's why we brought the private school to us. So we brought Grace College, Grace Seminary from Indiana over to us. That's all on the ground. These students going to that school here in Akron do not qualify for financial aid. They can't get loans, they can't get scholarships. So we said, we'll create those things. So we'll create those things. You earn them. They work hard for their scholarships. You earn them so that when you're through with your real education, you can go be a missionary. There's not a real high earning ceiling in missions. You can be a church planter. Financially, you're able to act on those things because you don't have six-figure debt chasing you afterwards. And so we started that program about 10 years ago. And that program has worked tremendously. It's going strong today. People who are interns and residents studying for ministry today. And over the course of those 10 years, we have trained a ton of people that have come through those programs and who are now moving into full-time ministry. And what that means is this. That means that we're going to be able to move ahead in a big way. We need people who are willing to change careers or change education path and study for full-time ministry, and we need to be a part of producing this as a church. Here's the stats. Ready? Here's the stats. Only 16% of pastors in North America are under the age of 40. 16%. The average age of a pastor in North America is 60. 85% of all pastors in North America will be of retirement age in the next 4.5 years. So you're seeing churches close all over the country, all over Akron. And the reason they're closing is not because they don't have faithful people, and it's certainly not because there's not a harvest field. They're usually closing because there's no one to lead them. That's why churches keep giving their buildings to Grace Church. That's why we keep inheriting other church buildings, because it's down to the last couple of lay people, and they're like, what do I do with a church building? And we're like, we'll take it. And they'll say, if we'll give it to you, will you start a new church? Will you not sell it? Will you not turn it into a parking lot for the hospital? Like, will you start a new church? And if we have a leader, we will say yes. And then we'll start another campus. There's a massive crisis in North America, and it's not 50 years from now, it's 10 years from now. It's actually 4.5 years from now. And the ability to proclaim the gospel for the local church is going to be deeply, deeply affected, right? These men and women have said, we'll be trained up, we'll give our career to that, and some of them have said, we'll go and we'll start that new work. And if you're with us, church family, we'll go do it. So a great example of this is our Akron East campus. 4 years ago, we asked Pastor Ryan. Some of you remember Ryan. He was a lesser version of me in the way that he looked. He's kind of ugly, but he's a great personality. But we asked Pastor Ryan, and we said, Ryan, would you go and start a new campus church plant on the east side of Akron? And he and Lori said yes. So this is what we did. We took Pastor Ryan, who was an intern and a resident at Grace Church. We teamed him up with Pastor Aaron, who was a resident at Grace Church. We teamed him up with Hannah Schaefer, who was an intern and then a resident at Grace Church. And then we put on our team River Harder, who was an intern and is now a resident at Grace Church. We then connected them with about 150 people from especially the Bath and the Norton and the Barberton campuses. And we put together a church family that could move with them and get that work going. This weekend, Akron East Campus is what we call it. We had a church building give us their building. So we moved in there at the end of the year. This weekend, they'll have about 600 people who will come to that campus. They had almost 1,000 people at Christmas time. They're growing rapidly. Within a 3-mile radius, they're down on Market Street in Ellet. And within a 3-mile radius, there's about 70,000 people who live within about 3 miles. And they are the strongest gospel teaching church in that area. So we look for places where the gospel is not clear, it's not easily accessible. We look and say, who is willing to go? A bunch of people just like you said, I have a God dream. I have a willing, we'll do it. We'll do it. And those families went, that staff was like, we'll do it. We have all the job opportunities in the world, all kinds of churches out after us. We'll do the hard work of going to a hard soil. And God is blessing that and using that. And that investment we made about a decade ago and that we continue to make and we need to continue to make is now paying off big dividends. So when I look ahead, understanding all that, the next 10 years, what I believe is this. I believe that in the next 10 years, we'll start 10 to 20 new campuses because we have the leadership to do it because we made the investment years ago. So I believe in the next 10 years, I'm going to stand up here a bunch and I'm going to say, here's the next campus. Who wants to go? Here's the next leader. Who wants to go with them? And it's not just the Bath campus. The Norton campus does this. The Medina campus is doing this. It's the ecosystem of Grace Church. But God is going to allow us to push the gospel forward, to localize it in communities in ways that we've never been able to before. And it's nothing but exciting. We watched him do it 10 years ago. 11 years ago, we started our first campus. We had no idea what we were doing. And we watched him be faithful. And when we look ahead, we say, God, we believe that you're going to do that again and again. So on a high level, we're going to be sending missionaries. We're going to be planting churches. And it's not daydream stuff. It's not like, hey, wouldn't it be amazing? It's the plans are being developed. The leaders are in the pipeline, and we're moving down that path in a powerful and exciting way. So globally, the future is bright. When I then think about locally, and I think about what God is doing locally, because as we plant churches, we're also going to love the community that God has placed us in. And you guys do this so well, so well. And we do those things simultaneously. And when I look at what God is doing here locally at the Bath campus, it's absolutely incredible. I'll just give you some examples. You heard some of this in the video. Our youth ministry, junior high and high school students, has grown 40% since the fall. It's incredible. About every other week, high school students are baptized in youth group. I just want you to think about the courage. I would have never done that as a 16-year-old. I didn't have the courage to be baptized in front of my peers. That happened 2 weeks ago. That stat on the video is old now. It's out of date. That happened 2 weeks ago. And God is moving in a massive way. If you ever want to blow your mind, you can come around a little bit on a Wednesday. And if you come in on a Wednesday, this Gent Road building is overrun by teenagers. We sprayed for them. We can't get them out of here. Like, they're everywhere. And you will see hundreds of teenagers. And you will see them worshiping. And you will see them having a blast. And you'll see them interacting with other loving adults or small group leaders. And God is moving in massive ways and our junior high and high school ministry. Same thing's happening with children. If you want, on the same Wednesday night, you go to the Montrose building and you'll see hundreds of children. I was talking to one mom last night after Saturday service, and she said, Jeff, when I go to pick my kids up, the line to the Montrose building to pick my kids up goes all the way out to Cleveland Maslin and sometimes around the circle. Those kids are coming. We're teaching them about Jesus. They're having fun because everything's fun at Grace Church. But they're learning about Jesus. They're learning the Bible. They're learning the foundations of doctrine and theology. And they're a part of it. And families are looking and saying, that is so important to us, that we're going to make sure that our kids take those opportunities. And our staff and our team, our volunteers are embracing it. It blows your mind. And that's happening like right now today here at the church. When you look at the sports ministry, guys, if you were a part of giving financially, dreaming and praying about that building over there, I want you to know that everything that we dreamt that building would accomplish, it's accomplishing. It's incredible how much that thing is used 15 to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. From everything from discipleship groups to something as big as game day, or something as big as like men's basketball. There's exercise classes, there's volleyball, there's youth ministries, there's young adult, on and on and on and on, children's ministries during the day, on and on and on and on it's being used. And I like to say we don't have a sports ministry, we have a discipleship ministry with a ball. Every one of those 700 children that are in game day, every single one of them will have a one-on-one conversation about who Jesus is and how he wants to interact with them, every one of them. All the hundreds of kids that are going to come to our summer sports camps, every single one of them will have a one-on-one conversation about who Jesus is and how he wants to interact with them. Every single adult who participates in any aspect, exercise, basketball, whatever it is going to have a conversation about who Jesus is. They're going to be introduced to who the person of Jesus is and how that has affected someone's life around them. It is a powerful, powerful tool. And that ministry will go as far as we want it to go. But God is using that, and we ask him to use that facility as common ground. And Jesus is like, I love that prayer, here you go. And he's using it in huge, huge ways. Collective is our young adult ministry. If you want to come here on a Thursday night, you would see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of young adults all over this facility. Probably every other week, once a month minimum on a Thursday night, you'll see those young adults having baptisms on Thursday night. This just happened last week. Isaac spoke at it. I think they had 2 baptisms scheduled. He'll look and say, anyone else feel led to be baptized? And they'll baptize 10 more people. It's incredible what God is doing through Collective. Last fall, they took a retreat. They took a little over 350 young adults on that retreat. They had 2 baptisms scheduled. Pastor Josiah said, anyone just accepted Christ or anyone who has accepted Christ feel led to be baptized. They then did baptisms for the next 4 hours. Gave testimony about how Christ changed their life. Kids just getting in with their clothes on. They baptized so many people, the water started to get low. I've never seen that happen. God is working in powerful, powerful ways. And when you walk around Grace, and this is a normal week, you see a spirit of revival. You see a spirit of longing. Like, I just want to know who Christ is. I don't understand what you're talking about, but I want to understand. You see a love for each other. Like the one thing Jesus said should distinguish his people above all else. And you see it happening. People that I don't understand, people I might vehemently disagree with, but we love, we're accepting, even as we're challenging and teaching. It is a powerful, powerful thing. We're also seeing new doors open. We pay a lot of attention to this. When we look and say our community is inviting us into a space, we're going to pay a ton of attention to that, because it's really, really hard for you to think of a time when you've looked on the internet or on your news feed or on X or whatever and see the people of God being invited into the culture. It's usually the other direction. So when we see the community inviting us in, we pay a ton of attention to it. And where the community is inviting us in right now is in the area of special needs. And what we've discovered over the last couple years is that the special needs community, those with special needs and the caregivers of those who have special needs, is greatly underserved by the church. And so we started noticing this. We started trying to address it. And as we were trying to address it, the community kind of opened their arms up more and more. They're like, come on in. Like, we will take. And we're like, well, we're Grace. We kind of take Jesus with us wherever we go. And they're like, we're all about Jesus. Bring him over here. And so we're seeing these huge doors open for people who have special needs, and then they're caregivers. This powerful, difficult calling that God has put on some parents, some siblings' life to care for the one who has a special need. And we're seeing that community open up more and more. So when I look around, I'm like, man, like what God is doing, what God is willing to do, of course what God is able to do, it's absolutely incredible. And when I look at that, what I see is God trusting us with it. It's real fascinating. In Luke chapter 16, Jesus is explaining a parable to his followers. And he says this in verse 9. He says, here's the lesson about the parable. The lesson is, use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then when your possessions are gone, they will welcome you into a eternal home. And then he says, this sentence is kind of a famous statement. He says, if you're faithful in little things, you will be faithful in large ones. And then he goes on, he puts out a warning. He said, but if you're dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. And if you're trustworthy about worldly wealth, if you're untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with the true riches of heaven? If you ask me, why is God working at Grace in a powerful way? I will say to you, I don't think it's because we're smart. I mean, you got me, so you got limitations, right? So I don't think it's because we're so smart. I don't think it's because we're cutting edge. I don't think we're doing something other churches aren't doing or can't do. If you ask me, why does God trust us with so much? I would say because you have been faithful in these little things. I've been here 31 years, and I would say that the secret sauce of Grace Church is that every time God has asked for people to sacrifice, the answer has been yes. And when we've done that in little things, he entrusts us with more and more. When Heidi and I started the Bath campus 24 years ago, our biggest challenge was that the roof leaked, and when it leaked, it would short out the sound system. And that was a massive challenge. We're like, we need to fix the roof. And we all looked at each other and were like, how are we going to do that? And that it's a little thing now. You don't think much about it. But back then it was a huge thing. And people were faithful. And God started to look and say, those folks say yes. And when you, as an individual, live with God with what I call a predetermined yes, God, my life is yours, my money is yours, my time is yours, my future is yours. Whatever you want, I'll go where you ask me to go. I'll do what you ask me to do. It's a predetermined yes. God, the answer is yes. Go ahead and ask the question. The answer is yes. Go ahead and ask the question. When you do that, what happens is we wind up doing that. And a bunch of yes people make up a yes church. And so as a church, we look at God and say, the answer is yes. What are you calling us to? And I've watched that play out again and again and again and again. And God, as we've been faithful with what we have, God has given us more and more. God, we started sports ministry in a soccer field. Then you gave us Montrose, and we believe, God. And if we say yes to you, would you flood the new building? And he's like, yeah. You say, I love a yes prayer. And we ask God, and he has given us exactly what we ask him for. God, we value children and youth. If we build the children's ministry before we ever touch adult stuff, will you bring us children? Will you bring us youth? And he looks and said, yeah, you do that. I'll do that for you. And he's overwhelmed us. God, we love young adults. We focus on a 24-year-old here. As we get older and we let things go and we give the church over to a younger generation, will you bring a younger generation to us? The average church in North America has one person in their 20s in it. One. Will you give it? Yeah. If you guys will, we're always giving it. That's why half of you hate the music here. It's not for you. It's for them. And you should get used to it because honestly, it will keep you young and the subwoofer will put your heart back into rhythm. Just saying, you don't got to pay for that. Just come to Saturday night service. It's even louder there, right? So see what I'm saying? As we have said yes, God has said, great. You guys have been faithful again and again and again. You've done that on a personal level. And when you do, a church is a sum total of its parts. When we do that personally, we wind up doing that corporately. And God trusts us with more and more, right? So the opportunities are massive. And every massive opportunity comes with a challenge. And our challenge right now is this. I wrote it down this way. Our challenge is that the opportunities God is giving us to reach our community are outpacing our ability to respond to them. It's happening so fast and on such a great level that we have to stop and we have to organize ourselves in a new way and in a different way in order to respond to the things that God has in front of us. And what that means is this. We have to stop and say, these opportunities that God has given us need resources and they need relationships. So what we're going to do for the next couple of months, I'm going to take the next 3-4 weeks and I'm going to talk about resources. And I'm going to ask you to be involved financially at the church. Some of you are, some of you aren't. And all of us need to be. And so we're going to talk about what those resources are and how we will use this as we go forward. Now let me say this. Grace Church does not have money problems. I don't want you to hear me wrong. We're dead on when it comes to budget right now. God is providing for all of our needs. This has nothing to do, that building is paid for. It's got nothing to do with getting out of debt. This is about if we want to chase this opportunities, there's resources involved. And there's relationships. I'm going to talk to you for a few weeks about money, and then at the last weekend of March, I'm going to ask you to make a financial commitment. If you don't want to do that, you should skip church the last weekend in March because that's what we're going to do, right? So I'm going to ask you for that. Ready? That's the easy part. Starting on Easter for the next month, I'm going to ask you for a relational commitment. That's the hard part. Because to embrace all that God is doing, we have to wrap those opportunities in relationships. And we have to give ourselves to each other, and we have to give ourselves to the community that's around us. And the way that we're talking about this is this. We're saying as we embrace these opportunities, we have to do this intentionally, we have to do it regularly, and we have to do it in an ongoing way. Resources and relationships. When you look and you say, man, God is bringing us so many junior high and high school students, isn't it incredible? We value children, isn't it incredible? How do we respond to this? I'm like, well, what God is doing there needs resources and it needs relationships. But it needs intent. It can't be, I bumped into a kid and said hi. I'm intentionally, it needs to be regular. Yeah, one time when I got back from 6 months at the lake, and that kid remembered that I existed, and it needs to be ongoing. It's not we don't need to raise money and have a big youth event. We need to raise the opportunity so that the schools and others know that they can count on Grace Church. And we don't need to have a big mixer, intergenerational mixer. We need other loving adults tied into junior high and high school students' lives, like a coach or a teacher would be. When you look at collective and our young adult ministry, it needs resources, it needs relationships. But it's intentional. Yeah, I sat down on this side of the auditorium at the 11 a.m. service and was surrounded by college kids. I checked my wallet and my phone, and it's regular. I'm not talking about blowing through once a month. And it's ongoing. Number one relationship missing in a young adult's life is a relationship with a parent, especially fathers. So it's ongoing. I can't meet you, connect with you, and disappear to the lake for 4 months. I can't look and say, well, my kids are raised. Now that my nest is empty, I'm a free agent. You could switch that and say, my kids are raised. Now that my nest is empty, I have the ability to invest myself relationally and probably financially too. And it's not an event. We don't need to have a big party for young adults. They need pastors. They need residents. They need scholarships to retreats, things like that. And so it's resources that are intentional, regular, ongoing, and relationships. Special needs. I have a passion for this special needs opportunity. And it's going to take resources and it's going to take relationships. It's going to take resources because to volunteer in an area of special needs, you need to be trained by someone who knows what they're doing. I can't just pop in. I need to be able to have my head around it. And for that person with special needs and their caregiver, for that mom and dad to say, or that sibling to say, I feel safe with my loved one and me not in the room. See, it takes resources, and then it takes people to be a part of that. Sometimes that ministry is one-on-one, two-on-one, because of the special need of the person who's involved. But wouldn't it be unbelievable? Wouldn't it be unbelievable if a caregiver could come, the person that has the special needs was being cared for, not just babysat, but interacted with and taught about who Jesus is in a way that they could understand? And then what if that caregiver could look and say, I have a respite every week. I just call it going to church. And I can sit in services. I can think. I can receive. I can worship. And then after services, I have like a group that I could go to of friends, and we have a similar journey. Wouldn't that be incredible? Well, that takes resources and it takes relationships. See? And it's not something we're going to fire up for 3 years and pay it off. It's not like a building. If we start a special needs department, you continue to give that resources and relationships, just like you would a youth department or a children's department. And I look at what God's given us, it's incredible, and it's outpacing where we're at right now, and we're not in trouble. No way, shape, or form is the church in financial trouble. No way, shape, or form are we like, nobody volunteers around here. That's not what's going on. But if we want to push ahead, then all of us have to step up and say, God, what do you want to do through me? And then you have to say that I want to be a part of the us. Because the us will organize this, but the you has to be bought into it. See how that works? So this is all about opportunity. This is all about vision. This is all about God has blessed us with more and more. And these are the ways that we have to organize ourselves, so to say, in order to lock onto that in a bigger and bigger level. And it's the expansion of the ongoing ministry of Grace Church. I was just coaching pastors here these last couple of weeks. That's where I was. You guys loan me out once in a while, and I go try to help other churches. So that's what I was doing. And I was talking to a pastor. Actually, this was in the fall. I was talking to a pastor, and he goes, Jeff, what are you guys doing? Like, the church is growing, all these people coming to Jesus, all this kind of stuff. He said, what's your program? What's your secret? What's your thing? And I said, I don't know, man. Like, nothing what you're thinking. And I looked at him, I said, listen, the most effective thing Grace Church does for evangelism, discipleship, and care is we turn the lights back on Monday morning. This is not a thing that we do. This is who we are. And as an individual, this is not a thing. It's not a kick that you get on. It becomes a part of your life. It's intentional. It's regular. What I do on Thursday nights is I do, and it's ongoing. It doesn't have a sunset. Doesn't mean you're locked in for life, but it's not like I'll do this for 2 months and then we'll see. That's how I approach the gym, but that's not how you approach ministry, right? And so financially, and then the hard part really is the life investment part, because most of us would rather throw money at something than throw our time and our lives at it. I'm like, that's not the way a family works. A family works through investment. And if we'll surround both of these areas, then I know that God is going to work and that he's going to bless in a really powerful and wonderful way. I was talking to a friend of mine, a young guy, and I say he's young just because he got his first job, his first like big job out of school. And so I was talking to him about all this. He kind of started his career, and I was sharing with him some of these opportunities. And he looked at me and he said, he goes, Jeff, he goes, I love Grace. He goes, I love you. And he said, I'm in. He said, I'll start to donate to the church to help with those things. And I stopped him. I said, I don't want you to do that. And he kind of looked at me, a little perplexed. And I said, I'm not asking. I said, I want to be sure you understand something. In a church is not a charity. So I looked at him. I said, you're not my donor, and I'm your charity. That's not what a church is. That's what the Red Cross is. It's what the United Way is. And it's fine. But that's not what a church is. I'm not cultivating donors by sitting here and talking to you. The metaphors Jesus uses for a church is family. He uses the word his body. It's his metaphor. And then he uses the term his bride. So everything in a church is family. So when a church talks about money or a church talks about opportunity, it's not a donor-receiver relationship. This is a family conversation. And so I looked at my friend. I said, so I'm sitting here as a brother talking to you about what the family is called to, and I'm asking you about how you want to be a part of that as a family member. And he's a smart guy, and the light went on immediately. He goes, I understand what you're talking about. He said, when I was going to go to college, me and my mom and dad sat down. And when we sat down, we talked about how we were going to get me through school. And I got a scholarship, and I got a part-time job, and I went to school full-time. And my dad said he'll get a few more years out of the Honda so he doesn't take on a car payment. And my mom said she'll pick up a shift at work. And we as a family got me through school. I said, that's exactly it. You as a family had an organizational meeting, and you decided how to organize your finances and what the goals of those finances were. And then the family put their energy toward that. And you accomplish that goal. So when we have these conversations, these are not donor meetings. If you think of the church as a donor, you should keep your money. That's not the way Jesus talks about it at all. These are family conversations. And what I'm trying to say is I see God doing this stuff in the family, and I'm trying to look at you and saying, you really should not miss out on this family party. It's super exciting what God is doing. It's life-changing. And I never get shy about inviting you into the most exciting, fulfilling thing that you could ever be a part of, and that's the church of Jesus Christ. And if we want to chase these things, there's no like, you got to be a part of it or we're going to shut the doors. That's not remotely true. But if we want to chase these things, then we have to chase them. We have to do that together. And I can promise you that down that path of lives being changed and people being drawn close to Christ and loving people, you're going to find the happiest, most fulfilling, most meaningful parts of your life, right? And I want to invite you into it because this is happening all around us. If you have accepted Jesus or you have been baptized here at Grace in the last 3 years, raise your hands. Just put them up real quick. See, it's all around you. This is happening all majority of churches this weekend are talking about whether they can stay open. They're not talking about the new opportunities that God has in front of them. And what God has gifted us is he has gifted us this wonderful blessing of getting to dream. Wonderful blessing of so many people responding to Jesus that we can't keep up with it. And that's not because he thinks Jeff's great. That's because he knows that when he asks you, you have always said yes. It's a predetermined yes. And because you say it individually, we wind up saying it collectively. And when we say yes to those things, he gives us more than we can ask or imagine. And everything we dreamed about with that yes, when we said yes 5 years ago to that building, everything we dreamed in that yes, he's actually given us. And it's got nothing to do with the building. It's got everything to do with the people who are a part of it. And he wants to do that again, and he wants to do that more and more. So I'm super excited about the season that we're going into. And I'm super excited that I'm grateful that God has entrusted us with it, all right? Here's the 2 things I'm going to ask you for this weekend. Number 1 is this. I'm going to ask you to take this journey with us. So we're going to talk about this stuff for a few weeks. And like I said, I'm going to talk next 2 weeks, I'm going to talk about money. And then the last week of March, I'm going to ask you to make to commit to start giving or to give in a more substantial way to Grace so we can provide the resources for this. Starting on Easter, we're going to start talking about investing our lives. And at the end of that conversation, I'm going to look at you, I'm going to ask you to start investing your life. And if we'll help you, we'll equip you, we'll get you ready if you're unsure about that. But I'm going to look at you and say, hey, everybody off the bench, let's go, right? We got stuff to do. Jesus coming back, people going to hell, let's roll. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just take that journey and at least hear it out. So the next 2 weeks, some of you have no idea why a church talks about money. Some of you have no idea why Jesus cares about it, because he cares a lot about it because it's the biggest obstacle to us actually serving him. Some of you have no idea how this stuff works. That's great. It's no big deal. I'm going to teach you that. I will not guilt trip you and I will not pressure you. That's not the way I roll. And if you've been here, you should know that by now. But I'll teach you what the Bible says about it, and then you decide whether you respond to that. And then next week, some of you have no idea. Some of you just accepted Jesus and you don't know that part of being a Christ follower is that you help other people become Christ followers and you teach them how to obey and follow Jesus. And so we'll walk you through that and we'll talk to you about how to do that. And then we want to launch you into that journey on some level so that you know who you're going to connect to, what you're going to do to make that connection, and when that's going to be on your calendar. So that's the first thing. If you're going to be, I know there's spring breaks and stuff, if you're going to be gone, just make a commitment to God and to yourself that even if you're gone, you're going to watch it online. I am beautiful in high definition. I'm telling you, it's something else. Like, you will enjoy that. And so, like, do that and then send me the pictures. And I like to know where I get to talk. It's often beautiful settings. And so do that. Okay, but let's take the journey. The second thing I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to engage in this. This is in your chair. This is 21 days of prayer. This is not prayer for the church or prayer that we achieve our goals. This is about you. And this is you looking and saying, God, who are you calling me to be? What is my God dream? How are you going to use my talents, my abilities, my pain, my life experiences, my spiritual gifts, right? And so we're putting together a connection. We'll text you, we'll email you, we'll kind of guide us, but we thought it'd be fun if we unified through this. So this 21 days of prayer, it starts tomorrow. The QR code will hit you. It'll get you signed up for texts and emails, stuff like that. You can also just do it off the chair if you want. If you're watching online, it's on the website. But just be a part of that. And just take 21 days and just make it a point to ask God, who do you want me to be and what do you want to do? God may call some of you into full-time ministry. You never know. I just had that conversation with a 45-year-old, very successful businessman. He's like, I feel called to be a pastor. I'm like, well, let's get you moving toward being a pastor. Some of you is going to ask God, he's going to change your life direction. I had a conversation with an 18-year-old young lady the other day, and she said, I feel called to be a missionary in Mexico. I said, all right, well, then we need to figure out how to get you to Mexico. She said, I need to study. So I want to go to Argentina so I can study the Bible and theology in Spanish. I'm like, man, good luck with that. She's like, but this is what God's called me to. I'm like, then we got to get you to Argentina somehow. You have no idea what God's going to call you to, how he's going to ask you to be a part of. How you've been a part of Grace Church for, 10 years. You never thought about going and being a part of a campus launch somewhere else. But God has a calling and a direction, a purpose for your life, and it's where you're going to be the happiest and most fulfilled and find the deepest relationship with God when you're living in those God dreams that God has put on your heart. So you're praying about that, right? You're praying about that stuff. And then as you do that, we'll wind up doing, because God forms us, we'll wind up doing what God has called us to do, right? It's going to be an awesome journey. It's going to be an exciting one, and I'm excited. I've been waiting since September to get into this. I'm not that patient usually, but I'm super excited about what God is doing. I'm grateful for it, and I'm grateful that we get to do that together. Okay. All right. Would you bow your heads and pray with me for a minute? We're going to sing this song. Band's going to come out here and. This song is a prayer, and I just encourage you as you pray, you listen to these words, as you sing along with it, it just puts our heart in the position that God would want our heart to be in. So Jesus, in these moments, would you reach to us? Would you push deeply? Would you open us up, God? For some of us, this is terrifying, and we've never stepped out on faith to invest our lives in these ways. God, for some of us, we've done it before, and a lot of life and a lot of pain has happened. And so the idea of doing it again, the familiarity of it makes us hurt. And so God, would you bring healing? Would you give help? And then God, for some of us, it's a memory. We remember when our relationship with you was dynamic. So God, make it a present reality. And for those who are living this way, God, let it be encouragement and a renewal and an expression of our passion and love for you. So Jesus, as we sing this prayer, God, would you let it reflect our hearts for you?